Y News.
Good evening. The Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption, or VACC, seeks an investigation into the neglect allegedly committed by the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration and the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration in the case of Joanna Demafelis, the overseas Filipino worker found dead inside a freezer in Kuwait. Grace Casin will tell us why.
At 3 in the afternoon local time in Kuwait, the remains of Joanna Demafelis was flown back to the Philippines. The cadaver of the overseas Filipino worker, or OFW, will arrive in Manila tomorrow and will be sent home to her family in Iloilo on Saturday. Demafelis was the Filipino migrant worker found dead in a freezer at an abandoned apartment in Kuwait. Yesterday, Philippine Ambassador to Kuwait Rene Villa visited the Al Sabah Hospital to ensure that the lifeless body of the Filipina had been prepared. According to Ambassador Villa, the officials of the Ministry of Interior of Kuwait vows to do all it can to capture the suspects in the killing, a Lebanese national and a Syrian wife. Both were employers of Demafelis.
Na-shock rin ng buong Kuwait sa krimeng ito at naptindi ang galit nila sa nangyaring ito. At sana nga ay mahuli na sa Lebanon man o sa Syria ang mag-asawang ito.
In the Philippines, the Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption, or VACC, seeks for a conduct of an investigation into the alleged neglect by the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, or OWWA, and Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, or POEA, in connection with the death of the Filipina migrant worker. According to one of VACC's lawyers, Attorney Manuelito Luna, the family of the murdered OFW sought the group's help. Luna reveals the family has been seeking help from the POEA and OWWA since 2016 due to the abuse being experienced by Joanna in the hands of her employers. But he claims the two government agencies ignored the complaints of Joanna's family.
Pwede nating iligtas si Ms. Demafelis, hindi na iligtas dahil pinasa-pasa yung complaint ng pamilya. Kung ganito po ang treatment ng ating mga opisyalis sa POEA or OWWA, dapat magbalot-balot na po sila.
The group has asked the Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, to investigate the issue. Grace Casin, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
Malacanang remains positive that the ban on the deployment of Filipino workers will not affect diplomatic ties between the Philippines and Kuwait. Here's why from Rosalie Cos.
President Rodrigo Duterte orders Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano to secure the Kuwaiti government's commitment to protect overseas Filipino workers in the said country. This is the purpose of the talks between Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano and Kuwaiti Ambassador to the Philippines Saleh Ahmad Al-Tuaik. Malacanang is confident that the issue will not impact on the two countries' diplomatic relationship.
I'd like to think that the long-term Philippine-Kuwaiti relations will not be affected. However, this consultation between the Secretary of Foreign Affairs and the Kuwaiti ambassador, as we all know, is a very important consultation.
Yesterday, it was reported that Kuwait's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Sabah, condemned Duterte's statements, suggesting it could damage ties between the two countries. The foreign minister was believed to have been surprised by the sudden decision of President Duterte to order the repatriation of thousands of Filipinos in Kuwait. In defense of President Duterte, Malacanang says it is but normal for the chief executive to act for the protection and welfare of the Filipino citizens in other countries.
Paulit-ulit na niya pong kondenahin ang ating presidente, pero katungkulan po ng presidente na bigyan ng proteksyon ang mga mamamayang Pilipino kahit man nasan sila.
Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue, Malacanang.
China asserts its commitment to the Philippines that there is no new reclamation and building of new artificial islands in the South China Sea. This is aside from the access continuously given to Filipino fishermen within the areas of dispute and the agreement of all parties to protect the environment and marine ecosystem. This is part of the commitment that the Philippines and China have agreed upon in the second bilateral consultation mechanism between the representatives of the two countries held in Manila on Tuesday, February 13. A statement of Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano says the bilateral consultation mechanism is an important step to resolve the maritime dispute and intensify the cooperation even on the possibility to conduct joint exploration. Malacanang downplays China's naming of some underwater features and in the Philippine Rise. Here's why from Rosalie Cos.
Malacanang clarifies that China's naming of some undersea features in the Philippine Rise is not violation against the Philippines' sovereign rights over it. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque says China's naming of the said features is a scientific process and it does not mean that China is owning them. Roque underscores that the Philippines will also not recognize the Chinese names.
Kinikilala ng China na wala silang kahit anong karapatan doon sa Benham Rise at kinikilala nila ang sovereign rights natin sa Benham Rise.
Malacanang reiterates that there is nothing to worry about the action of China on the Philippine Rise. Even Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zheng Xuan has earlier said that China respects the rights of the Philippines over the Philippine Rise and insists that the International Hydrographic Organization permitted the naming.
中方尊重菲律宾方面涉及滨汉隆起的有关权利，同时我们也希望有关方面能够本着专业和负责任的态度来看待有关技术性的工作。
Malacanang says the government will give names to the underwater features.
Ito ay na-award sa Pilipinas. Kahit anong sabihin ng China, maglalagay din tayo na Pilipinong pangalan dyan. Kung ano man ang tawagin ng mga Chino dun sa underwater features na yun, babaliwalain na rin natin.
Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue, Malacanang.
Mount Mayon's continuous spewing of white smoke is a good sign, according to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS. However, the agency clarifies it's not a sufficient basis to lower the alert level for the volcano. Here's why from Monokson.
Today is the 32nd day since Mayon volcano began to erupt. According to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, Mount Mayon has already spewed 82 million cubic meters of lava, the biggest volume since 1960. Although it's not discounting the possibility of a huge eruption, PHIVOLCS says Mayon volcano is slowly coming down. PHIVOLCS based this information on the white smoke coming from the crater of Mount Mayon. PHIVOLCS says the smoke billowing from the crater of Mount Mayon is sulfur dioxide. As long as it continues to spew smoke, this means that nothing blocks the magma and thus helps the lava to continuously flow. This, PHIVOLCS says, is a sign that the volcano is beginning to calm down.
Kung biglang bumagsak yung sulfur dioxide, that means blocked yung crater, hindi makalabas yung gas. It means nagbibuild up siya ng pressure.
But the agency notes it's not a sufficient basis to lower the alert level for Mayon volcano. In the past 24 hours, the agency recorded several episodes of lava fountaining that lasted for up to 20 minutes. The lava flow reaches up to 4.5 kilometers from the crater of the volcano. More than 100 volcanic earthquakes, on the other hand, have already caused a series of rock falls. The volcano is also still swelling.
Hindi namin may bababa dahil again, lahat ng parameters is matataas pa rin.
PHIVOLCS is yet to determine the amount of lava that the volcano still has to release or when the eruption will end. But with the white smoke it emits, the agency believes the threat of a possible massive eruption has already lessened. Monhokson, UNTV News and Rescue, Legazpi City, Albay.
The Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption, or VACC, says Health Secretary Francisco Duque III might face obstruction of justice charges. The VACC notes this is if the Health Secretary will refuse to cooperate with the Department of Justice, or DOJ, in its probe on the issue involving Dengbaksha. Attorney Manuelito Luna claims Duque refuses to provide documents the VACC has requested. He says these documents pertain to the allegedly anomalous purchase of the controversial vaccine. The VACC has asked the DOJ to issue a subpoena for the said documents.
He will not cooperate with us. He will keep those documents that we are requesting. Baka ma-obstruction of justice po siya. He may have violated Republic Act 6713 by denying the VACC access to these documents.
The Sandigan Bayan postpones the scheduled arraignment today of former President Benigno Aquino III in connection with the bloody Mama Sapano incident. This after Supreme Court Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno released a temporary restraining order or TRO last February 9 regarding the supposed arraignment. Sereno is the chairman of the First Division of the High Tribunal. The TRO is the Supreme Court's response to the appeal of the Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption or VACC to the decision of the Office of the Ombudsman stating the filing of graft and usurpation of authority complaints against Aquino instead of reckless imprudence resulting to homicide. Aside from this, the SC also ordered the Ombudsman not to temporarily push through with the complaints filed against Aquino, former PNP Chief Alan Purisima, and former PNP SAF Director Getulio Napeñas. Some transport network vehicle service drivers and operators asked for the removal of supply limit or cap in the number of ride-sharing units traversing the country. Mai Bermudez will tell us why.
From 45,000, the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board increases the number of transport network vehicle service units allowed to traverse nationwide to 65,000. Some TNVS groups, however, expressed opposition to this. In today's Senate Committee on Public Services hearing, Uber and Grab representatives, as well as other personalities, asked to remove the limitations on the number of TNVS that will be given accreditation.
We're supportive of the LTFRB's proposal to put stickers. Both TNCs agreed to that, and we feel that that's what is necessary to fulfill the purpose of the government, which is to identify TNVS.
They say the demands of the riding public will be met if there will be more TNVS. Senator Grace Poe admits that the existing number of public transportation, such as Uber and Grab, still does not suffice.
Payagan na muna natin na marehistro na muna yan. Tapos, at saka natin buksan ulit.
Ang variable lang dito, yung percentage of full-time, which is lower than the part-time TNVS. So pwede rin na magiging full-time TNVS ka.
To effectively identify the difference between TNVS and other public transportation, LTO says they are also open to the idea of creating new plates for TNVS.
In fact, we asked them to suggest a color scheme for their group.
Mai Bermudez, UNTV News and Rescue, Senate of the Philippines.
Next on Y News. Foreign and local advocates call on the government not to privatize public utilities in the country. The Malolos Regional Trial Court concludes trial against Major General Jovito Palparan. Y News will be right back. Meanwhile, I'm Darlene Basingan. Stay tuned for Angelo Castro III. Good evening.
On Y News tonight, President Rodrigo Duterte orders the Foreign Affairs Department to secure Kuwaiti government's commitment to protect Filipino workers in their country. The Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption seeks an investigation on the alleged negligence on the part of POEA and OWWA over Joanna Demafelis murder. And firearms survival gears on display in 2018 Tactical and Survival Expo. Good evening. Malacanang remains positive that the ban on deployment of Filipino workers will not affect diplomatic ties between the Philippines and Kuwait. Here's why from Rosa Licos.
President Rodrigo Duterte orders Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano to secure the Kuwaiti government's commitment to protect overseas Filipino workers in the said country. This is the purpose of the talks between Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano and Kuwaiti Ambassador to the Philippines Saleh Ahmad Al-Tuaik. Malacanang is confident that the issue will not impact on the two countries' diplomatic relationship.
I'd like to think that the long-term Philippine-Kuwaiti relations will not be affected. However, this consultation between the Secretary of Foreign Affairs and the Kuwaiti Ambassador, as we all know, is a very important consultation.
Yesterday, it was reported that Kuwait's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Sabah, condemned Duterte's statements, suggesting it could damage ties between the two countries. The foreign minister was believed to have been surprised by the sudden decision of President Duterte to order the repatriation of thousands of Filipinos in Kuwait. In defense of President Duterte, Malacanang says it is but normal for the chief executive to act for the protection and welfare of the Filipino citizens in other countries.
Paulit-ulit na niya pong kondenahin ang ating presidente, pero katungkulan po ng presidente na bigyan ng proteksyon ang mga mamamayang Pilipino kahit man nasan sila.
Rosalie Coz, UNTV News and Rescue, Malacanang.
Foreign and local advocates call on the government against privatization of primary public services in the country. Meanwhile, the amendment of the 82-year-old Public Service Act is now being heard in the Senate. Rajel Adora will tell us why.
The ASEAN Parliament on Human Rights believes that public service utilities such as water and electricity should be under the responsibilities of the government. The group says that as they notice in other countries, public service utilities in the Philippines are privately owned. This is why they are calling on the government to take back the management and regulation of these service utilities.
It has become a burden to the poor, and the set promises of efficiency, the promises of lower tariff and affordable water or energy is not the case. It is the government that helps the private partner through loans, grants, and guaranteed loans as well from the banks. End of the day, it is the taxpayers who are bearing the costs.
According to Charles Santiago, chairman of ASEAN Parliament on Human Rights, the Philippines must take after Malaysia, whose government had reclaimed the regulation of water supply services.
So in the last 5 years, we have taken it back and we are running it now. People here must push the Duterte government in order to start reclaiming public water and energy back for the state.
The Senate will study the matter according to Senator Antonio Trillanes IV.
Yung mga efficient naman ang delivery ng services, hindi natin kailangan gawa ng remedyo. Pero yung mga nakita natin na nagre-resulto ng monopoly at itong pag-iipit sa mga kababayan natin, yan, kailangan natin pag-isipan yan.
Meanwhile, the Senate is studying the proposed amendments to the 82-year-old Public Service Act, which is seen to ensure cheaper services such as transportation, internet, cell phone, water, and electricity under a fair market competition. Department of Information and Communication Technology Secretary Eliseo Rio said the amendment of the law will open doors for foreign investments and will create more jobs for Filipinos.
These laws that we have are quite antiquated when compared to our present advances in technology. Basically, the need for, as what you have mentioned, Madam, the need for foreign investors to create infrastructure and jobs in our country is badly needed.
Ibon Foundation, on the other hand, does not agree with the amendment. Ibon Foundation senior researcher Glenus Balange maintains that Filipinos should have control of the Philippine market and not the foreigners.
May mga proposals sa Public Services Act sa pag-amend nito na hindi makakabuti para sa ating ekonomiya. Kasi una sa lahat, tinatanggal natin ang effective control ng mga Pilipino sa ating ekonomiya at iba pang economic activities.
Rajel Adora, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
The Bureau of Internal Revenue has filed tax evasion complaints against a construction company based in Makati City. According to the BIR, the unpaid taxes of SKI Construction Group Incorporated has reached over 200 million pesos, covering taxable years 2005 and 2010. The BIR also filed tax evasion complaints against YN General Services Incorporated for 15 million pesos in unpaid taxes. The two companies allegedly refused to settle their deficiency taxes despite repeated notices.
The respondents' obstinate failure and continued refusal to pay their long overdue deficiency taxes despite repeated demands constitute willful failure to pay the taxes due to the government.
Quezon City employees and students simultaneously did the duck, cover, and hold in this year's simultaneous earthquake drill. Ray Pelayo will tell us why.
Upon the sounding of the siren, participants did the duck, cover, and hold during the first quarter nationwide simultaneous earthquake drill held at the Quezon City Memorial Circle today. This drill is still part of the yearly preparation led by the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council or NDRRMC. Various government agencies showcased their preparedness in addressing the needs of the affected populace and in evacuating possible victims. There was a scenario of fire, airlifting of victims through a chopper, and rescuing of victims trapped inside collapsed structures. According to Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana, the public should not ignore the threat of a powerful earthquake.
Pakiusap lang po, let us take this seriously. Let us not, huwag ating baliwalain ito dahil sabi ko nga kanina, itong mga anugan kung tayo ligtas o tayo ay patay.
Interior Secretary Officer in Charge Eduardo Año also underscores the importance of conducting regular disaster drills.
We cannot stop natural disasters, but we can arm ourselves with knowledge. Many lives wouldn't have to be lost if there is enough disaster preparedness.
The government fears the big one will strike when the West Valley Fault moves. Based on an initial study, a magnitude 7.4 earthquake might cause more than 1,000 casualties, over 100,000 injuries, and may destroy more than 170,000 buildings. Ray Pelayo, UNTV, News and Rescue, Philippines.
This year's Tactical Survival and Arms Expo 2018 will feature various kinds of survival, rescue, and self-defense techniques the Filipino public can employ in times of danger or calamity. Joanna will tell us why.
The possible occurrence of a 7.2 magnitude earthquake or the big one, the massive eruption of Mayon volcano, the onslaught of strong typhoons, and threats to national security. These are just some of the possible calamities and dangers Filipinos should prepare for. With this in mind, the Arms Corps Global Defense Incorporation will conduct another Tactical Survival and Arms Expo this year with the theme Defense, Security, and Survival Show for Sustainable Living.
Ito po isang show na naisip ng Arms Corps para maging avenue o daan para po sa ma-inform ang ating mga kababayan regarding sa disaster preparedness, pag-learn ng mga bagong defense skills for safety and security.
The said expo will showcase various types of firearms such as high-caliber guns, survival gears, and prepper stuff that one can use in times of calamity, emergency cases, and for self-defense. The event will also feature seminars where participants will be taught survival and rescue techniques. A self-defense seminar for women will also be held in the said event. The Tactical Survival and Arms will run from February 22 to 25 at the SMX Convention in Bonifacio Global City in Taguig City. Those seeking to participate may register online or at the event venue for free. The expo is open to anyone who would like to join, including the elderly or children.
It's everybody's responsibility to be prepared, right? So I hope that we can continuously have shows promoting preparedness throughout the time.
Joanna, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
Philippine Ambassador to Kuwait Rene Villa visited the Al-Sabah Hospital to oversee the preparation on the repatriation of Joanna Demafelis remains. Villa says the officials of the Ministry of Interior in Kuwait vowed to exhaust all it can to capture Joanna's former employers, a Lebanese and a Syrian couple who are labeled suspects behind her death.
Na-shock rin ng buong Kuwait sa krimeng ito at naptindi ang galit nila sa nangyaring ito. At sana nga ay mahuli na sa Lebanon man o sa Syria ang mag-asawa.
Meanwhile, the Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption, or VACC, seeks for a conduct of an investigation into the seeming negligence of the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, or OWWA, and Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, or POEA, in relation to Joanna's death. A VACC lawyer says the two agencies ignored the complaints filed by Joanna's family in 2016 on what they claim as abuse being experienced by Joanna in the hands of her employers.
Nating iligtas si Ms. Demafelis, hindi na iligtas dahil pinasa-pasa yung complaint ng pamilya. Kung ganito po ang treatment ng ating mga opisyalis sa POEA or OWWA, dapat magbalot-balot na po sila.
The Malolos Regional Trial Court finishes the trial of former Major General Jovito Palparan Jr. in connection with the kidnapping and serious illegal detention cases filed against him. In the last hearing, Palparan took the witness stand to testify that he was not involved in the kidnapping of two UP students in Hagonoy, Bulacan in 2006. Aside from Palparan, also involved in the case are Lieutenant Colonel Felipe Anotado and Master Sergeant Edgardo Osorio. The two UP students, Sherilyn Cadapan and Karen Empeño, remain missing until now. According to Prosecutor Assistant State Prosecutor JP Navera, the camps of Palparan and the prosecution team will submit their respective memoranda to the court. Afterwards, the court will release its decision on the case. The Philippines condemns fatal shooting at Florida High School, expresses condolences to the victims' kin. And the lower house passes free dialysis bill for poor Filipinos. Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. Manalo Castro III. This is Y News. Stay tuned for William Theo. Good evening.
Here are the headlines on Y News tonight. President Rodrigo Duterte orders the Foreign Affairs Department to secure Kuwaiti government's commitment to protect Filipino workers in their country. China asserts commitment to the Philippines not to build new artificial islands and reclamations in South China Sea. And NASA warns of sea level rising enough to cause significant problems for coastal cities in the future. Good evening. The Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption, or VACC, seeks an investigation into the neglect allegedly committed by the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration and the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration in the case of Joanna Demafelis, the overseas Filipino worker found dead inside a freezer in Kuwait. Grace Casin will tell us why.
At 3 in the afternoon local time in Kuwait, the remains of Joanna Demafelis was flown back to the Philippines. The cadaver of the overseas Filipino worker, or OFW, will arrive in Manila tomorrow and will be sent home to her family in Iloilo on Saturday. Demafelis was the Filipino migrant worker found dead in a freezer at an abandoned apartment in Kuwait. Yesterday, Philippine Ambassador to Kuwait Rene Villa visited the Al-Sabah hospital to ensure that the lifeless body of the Filipina had been prepared. According to Ambassador Villa, the officials of the Ministry of Interior of Kuwait vows to do all it can to capture the suspects in the killing, a Lebanese national and a Syrian wife. Both were employers of Demafelis.
Na-shock rin ng buong Kuwait sa krimeng ito at naptindi ang galit nila sa nangyaring ito. At sana nga ay mahuli na sa Lebanon man o sa Syria ang mag-asawang ito.
In the Philippines, the Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption, or VACC, seeks for a conduct of an investigation into the alleged neglect by the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, or OWWA, and Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, or POEA, in connection with the death of the Filipina migrant worker. According to one of VACC's lawyers, Attorney Manuelito Luna, the family of the murdered OFW sought the group's help. Luna reveals the family has been seeking help from the POEA and OWWA since 2016 due to the abuse being experienced by Joanna in the hands of her employers. But he claims the two government agencies ignored the complaints of Joanna's family.
Pwede nating iligtas si Ms. Demafelis, hindi na iligtas dahil pinasa-pasa yung complaint ng pamilya. Kung ganito po ang treatment ng ating mga opisyalis sa POEA or OWWA, dapat magbalot-balot na po sila.
The group has asked the Department of Labor and Employment or DOLE to investigate the issue. Grace Casin, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
Meanwhile, President Rodrigo Duterte orders Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano to secure the Kuwaiti government's commitment to protect overseas Filipino workers in the said country. This is the purpose of the talks between Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano and Kuwaiti Ambassador to the Philippines Saleh Ahmad Al-Kuwait. Malacanang is confident that the issue will not have a negative impact on the two countries' diplomatic relations.
I'd like to think that the long-term Philippine-Kuwaiti relations will not be affected. However, this consultation between the Secretary of Foreign Affairs and the Kuwaiti Ambassador, as we all know, is a very important consultation.
China asserts its commitment to the Philippines that there is no new reclamation and building of new artificial islands in the South China Sea. This is aside from the access continuously given to Filipino fishermen within the areas of dispute and the agreement of all parties to protect the environment and marine ecosystem. This is part of the commitment that the Philippines and China have agreed upon in the second bilateral consultation mechanism between the representatives of the two countries held in Manila on Tuesday, February 13. A statement of Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano says the bilateral consultation mechanism is an important step to resolve the maritime dispute and intensify the cooperation, even on the possibility to conduct joint exploration. Some senators believe that the passage of the anti-political dynasty bill into law will boost the development of the country. Aiko Miguel will tell us why.
The research of Ateneo School of Government from 2007 to 2016 shows that the 5 poorest provinces in the country are under political dynasties. These are the provinces of Lanao del Sur, Maguindanao, Northern Samar, Sarangani, and Sulu.
Yung concentration of political power, nakakasama talaga sa governance. Yung mga Fat Dynasty, nandun sila sa pinakamahirap na lugar ng Pilipinas. In fact, habang pataba ng pataba yung mga dynasty, lumalalim yung kahirapan dun sa mga lugar na yun.
This is the reason why some senators are convinced that it is timely to pass the anti-political dynasty bill into law.
Dahil nga isang pamilya kinokontrol yung isang lugar, hindi na nagiging maayos yung lugar dahil sila-sila na lang, no? At wala ng mga bagong ideas o wala ng mga incentives para ayusin yung mga lugar nila.
Through this, there will be a limit in the number of family members who can run for elections. The problem, however, lies on the fact that senators have not yet come into terms as to the acceptable degree of consanguinity for a family to not be considered a political dynasty.
Tsaka tapos na. Inadjourn na natin yung hearing sa Paul Dynasty. Kasi ang sinasabi, all we have to do, that's all Congress has to do is define it by law. So baka nga one page bill lang yan eh. One page committee report dahil i-define lang kung ano ang political dynasty at sino ang saklaw.
Siyempre, kung doon na-expose yung bata, why will you deprive somebody who's totally qualified just by reason of relations? Ang importante is an enlightened citizenry, an election that provides everybody with the knowledge.
Senator Grace Poe says the passage of the anti-political dynasty should take first priority over the proposed federalism.
Kung itutulak man natin ang isang bagay katulad ng federalism, unahin muna natin dalawang bagay. Yung anti-dynasty bill dapat ma-define at mapasa na. At pangalawa, freedom of information.
Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue, Senate of the Philippines.
In other news, Malacanang reacts to the recent deadly shooting spree in a high school in Florida. Grace Casin will tell us why.
The Philippine government condemned the shooting spree at a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida on Wednesday local time that killed 17 people. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque also expressed the country's condolences to the bereaved families of the victims of the shooting.
I'd like to reiterate that violence has no place in society. We condole with the families and friends of the victims.
19-year-old Nicholas Cruz was arrested about an hour after the incident. Cruz, to have been expelled from school for reasons that have not been made public, was found with multiple ammunition magazines and one AR-15 style rifle. Meanwhile, attending physicians at the Broward Health North provided update on the victim's condition as well as the suspect.
They're going to have successful surgeries, they're going to recover, they're going to go home.
Through Broward Health System, we received 17 patients. At Broward Health North, we received 8 patients and 1 suspect. The suspect was treated and released in police custody.
12 of the dead were killed inside the school building, 2 others just outside, 1 more on the street, and 2 other victims died of their injuries at a hospital. Grace Casin, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
The House Committee on Health passed a proposed free dialysis for poor Filipinos. The proposed law mandates each government hospital to set up a dialysis facility. The bill also seeks to expand the coverage of the PhilHealth benefit package to include kidney transplants. Under the proposal, the Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, will be in charge of identifying the beneficiaries of the free medical service. The bill is scheduled for plenary debate and voting before passing it into third and final reading in the House of Representatives. As preparation for the upcoming Village and Sangguniang Kabataan, or SK, elections on the 14th of May, the Department of the Interior and Local Government, or DILG, reminds all barangays to submit their report on where the funds of their respective SK councils went to last year. The DILG says the move aims to ensure that all funds for SK directly benefits the youth. Based on the guidelines of the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, 10% of the general fund of barangays allotted to SK councils should be used for youth development and empowerment programs until new SK officials are elected. The DILG gives barangays until March 15 to submit their respective reports. February 15, 2018, I'm William Theo, and because we need to know, we will always ask why. Thank you for watching Y News.